Hey, I'm Ty. I'm Paul's roommate.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, and I just want an honest response.
Sweet.
So the first question is, how do you respond when you realize that you're wrong?
Um, I usually get the first 5 minutes. It's not great, but I gotta reflect on what's right, and then I cool down after that. So,
All right, give an example of something you've been wrong about recently.
I said my fantasy team was gonna beat my other friend's fantasy team, and I was definitely wrong. I lost by 40 points this week.
All right, and why do you think that you came to a wrong conclusion?
Obviously, I don't know game. I don't watch enough football.
All right, and how did you learn that you were wrong?
Person that beat me, let me know about it for sure. And I lost by 40 points, so I can see that on the app.
Yeah. Okay, so what did it feel like knowing that you were wrong?
Being wrong is not a great feeling in general. Just hurts the pride, really, is what it feels like.
What is a social issue that you feel is most difficult for others to change their minds about?
I feel like gender identity is a pretty big one nowadays. It's hard to get people to believe and think a certain way.
So, what is the reason why you think this is specifically a social issue that causes difficulty in our viewpoints?
Because it's the clash of science and belief, and people only know traditional values of scientific facts. So
What role do you think implicit bias plays in our ability to change our minds?
I feel like it's a good portion. I feel like stereotypes. I mean, if you don't know enough knowledge on a certain topic, I feel like that's what you base your entire belief on.
What role do you think tribalism plays in our ability to adjust or change our perspectives?
It's also another big role because people like root for their team, people like being loyal to a certain side. That's why I get political parties nowadays. So yeah,
All right, thank you.
of course.
My name is Nathan Allison. I'm Paolo's sweet mate.
All right, Nathan, I got a couple questions. The first one is, how do you respond when you realize you're wrong?
The first thing I do is just a bit of personal reflection, and then I kind of go from there.
All right, give an example of something you've been wrong about recently.
Recently, I made a few mistakes in my fantasy draft, and it's kind of costing me now that we're a couple weeks in.
Okay, and why do you think that you came to the wrong conclusion?
Personal bias. I like green teams, and I drafted a guy who's in a green team over a guy who's on Cowboys, and I like the Cowboys, and just kind of didn't pan out for me.
All right, and how did you learn that you were wrong?
Well, when my guy put up like barely half as much points as the other guy, it just made me look like a fool. That's how I felt.
Yeah, so how did you feel?
I felt like a fool. I felt like an idiot. I let my personal bias persuade my decision, and it kind of ended up biting me in the butt.
All right, now this is a more serious question. What is a social issue that you feel is most difficult for others to change their mind about?
I would say abortion is probably the biggest one for me because I know people get super opinionated about that. I know it can lead to a lot of emotions because it's such a heavy and deep topic. So I think that's something that people really struggle to have an open mind when discussing.
So, what is the reason you think this specific social issue causes difficulty in our viewpoints?
Just because it's such a deep topic, so many people get really emotionally invested into it. Whether they're calling it a baby or a fetus, it's alive, it's not alive. You can really get upset about something pertaining to life, and I understand that.
And what role do you think implicit bias plays in our ability to adjust or change our perspective?
I have no clue what implicit bias means at all.
It means like your first thought, like your first instinct.
I don't know. I think it's just an interesting question because I don't know what my first instinct is in a lot of things, and a lot of time I'm wrong. But I do think it is going to change our bias on certain things.
Okay, and what role do you think tribalism plays in our ability to adjust, change your perspective? Now, tribalism is just kind of like how you associate with groups and maybe feel negative feelings towards people who are not in that group.
I think that's completely up to the person. For me, it doesn't matter who I'm rolling with. My ideas aren't going to change, but for someone else, it might be a little different. So I think that really depends on the person.
Hi, my name is Paul Padgett, and I'll be interviewing myself. So, first question is, how do you respond when you're wrong? So, personally, my ego gets a little butthurt, but other than that, I try and find middle ground and try and understand where I was wrong. Something I've been wrong about recently, I bet my roommate $5 that I could find tickets for the Bama game for less than $50. I was very wrong, could not find tickets for that cheap. I was wrong. I guess I thought that since it wasn't professional football, I thought maybe I could find cheap tickets. I don't know. How did I learn I was wrong? I looked up the tickets. I went on like 10 different websites for tickets, and they were all like $150 or more. What did it feel like? It was honestly embarrassing, but I admitted I was wrong, gave him his $5, and I held my end up. What is a social issue that people might find it hard to change their minds about? Personally, I think same-sex marriage is definitely a controversial topic that people have a lot of different viewpoints on. I think one of the reasons why it makes it so difficult to talk about is because it conflicts with people's core morals. There's a lot of religious morality that goes on between same-sex marriage and things like that, so I can see why that would be an issue. I think implicit bias plays a big role because, it's like what you think. You don't really, it's your first impression, so whatever people believe, that's going to be their first thought, and so I think it plays a very big role in their point of view. And then what role does tribalism play? I think tribalism also plays a very big role because people like being in groups, people like relating to other people, and they feel safe in that space, so they don't like it when people challenge their beliefs from the outside, from different groups. So now I'll be comparing and contrasting some of my roommate's answers to mine. Our first answer was pretty similar. We all noted that it's hard to hear when we're wrong, but we understand that it's important to take action and understand where we went wrong. Why we were wrong, for example, I was wrong because I just wasn't educated, and I assumed, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, I think I'm right. And I can go back to the course media on August 25th, the video, Why You Think You're Right Even When You're Wrong. And then Tyler also, his answer could be related back to another course media. He answered that he doesn't really know a lot about football, so it was a lack of knowledge, or I guess just a basis of very little knowledge. It's just like one input that led to his answer. So I could tie that back in with the course media video on August 28th, the danger of a single story. As to how it felt like to be wrong, we were all also in agreement. It's pretty embarrassing, doesn't feel good, no one likes to be wrong. And then for some of the more in-depth questions, for example, what reason makes it so difficult for some people to change their minds and their ideas? And we all kind of had the same answer, more or less, how it's really just boils down to people's morals and their core values, and whatever traditional values they have that prevents them from seeing the argument that other people make. So that ties into Dr. Hernandez's lecture on August 28th about positionality. And then, for example, Nathan answered that he knew that abortion was a very deep topic, and people get very emotionally invested because it's a talk about life. And that also ties into Dr. Hernandez's lecture on August 30th about values, whatever values people have. And then we are all in agreement on what role implicit bias plays. We all know that, I mean, it's hard to change your mind, especially when you're already set on something. If you go into something with an open mind, then there's a bigger chance that you can change your mind. But if you already have an implicit bias, it's really hard to change your mind. And then also, again, tribalism. There was a very good course media video about the dangers of tribalism, and also Dr. Hernandez had a great lecture about tribalism and in-groups on September 6th. And it's just people like to be in their own groups. They like to associate with people that like the same things they do and associate with the same things that they do. They don't like being wrong. They don't like outsiders telling them their other point of views. And so we were all in agreement on that last question as well.